We welcome retired teacher and author Karl Fisch, along with former middle school teacher, current instructor in physical education and health at Illinois College, and now also an author, Eric McClarey. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Excited to be back.
Yeah, it's great to see you both. So, in our April 1st, no joking, interview with you, Karl, about your easy to read book called TLDR, Financial Literacy for Employees of Colorado Public Schools, Scott suggested something. Scott, what did you suggest?
Well, I'm going to have to go back and listen, but I think it was something along the lines that, Karl, you should write one of these books for every single state. We should have one for every single state. What do you think?
Karl, what happened next?
Well, after panicking, because it was live and I didn't have control over the editing process, my initial response was I actually had considered trying to write a book for perhaps another state, and kind of shied away from it because I figured that eventually I came to the conclusion that I was worried I wouldn't know enough about that state's pension plan. I'm pretty well versed in Colorado's because I'm a member and I've worked with it for a long time, and I was even a board member for a while. Excuse me. So I felt pretty good about it, but then when I thought about doing another state, there's just all the little intricacies and ins and outs that you just don't know, that I was worried I'd just make a huge mistake. And then, you get into different, state tax policy and 403B options and just the way that districts do things differently in each state. It just became overwhelming, and I was afraid I'd write something that was not only not very helpful, but might actually be harmful. And I didn't want to do that. But then kind of offline, we discussed a little bit about, well, we could, perhaps solicit authors from other states who were members of those plans, and that would combine the basic idea of mine, the TLDR series that I thought was a decent idea, with some people who were living and breathing that pension, and that by bringing on some co-authors, might be able to alleviate those concerns that I would get something really, really wrong. And so at that point, it's like, hey, why didn't I think of that? And so that's kind of what happened next.
And how did Eric get in touch with you, or how did you get in touch with him?
So it was as a result of listening to your podcast. So Eric reached out, I think, to one of you first. And then we also then did publish a link to a Google form where people could sign up to show their interest. And you kindly put that on your podcast link as well. But I think Eric first reached out just via email before we even had that up. He was so excited about it, but I'll let him talk to that.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. So I listened to the podcast, and I think it was the same day. It was probably minutes after it finished. I actually tweeted out to you guys, hey, this is something that I'd love to be involved in if Illinois is going to be one of the future states. And you guys got us connected, and it just happened.
Well, Eric, you have just been great on so many fronts. I mean, this isn't the first time you've taken one of our crazy ideas and run with it, right?
Yeah, so you guys actually planted the seed to start teaching pre-service teachers about financial topics that will impact them in their teaching career, retirement options, the pension system. So I have started to include that in my curriculum for my students. I've actually tried to go do some presentations. I did one at IAFERD. I've done one for actually the entire campus here at IC. So I'm just trying to get the information out as much as I can.
Over to you, Scott.
So I guess I got a couple of questions for you. First of all, where'd you get those amazing glasses? I mean, those are some really nice looking glasses there.
Thank you. They are one of the cheapest pairs that you can get offline. I'm trying to remember the name. Venny, I think is the name. I got them for like $15 offline.
Okay, that makes me feel really bad because they look exactly like my glasses, and my glasses are Gucci. Not because I am a Gucci person, it's because it's the only pair that I like that my optometrist place. I know this is completely off topic, but when people are watching this on YouTube and they say who wore it better, it's going to be Eric. And he's also way smarter because he paid $15 for him. Now I feel really bad. So back to the topic at hand. As a former Illinois teacher, how valuable will this book be for current teachers?
I think it's incredibly valuable. I think it's critical that everyone knows about uh, not only the retirement options available to them, but what are some of the pros and cons about each of them. And most teachers really don't know about the pension. Most people are aware that they're going to get a pension. In Illinois, there's 2 tiers, and so most teachers are aware of what tier they're in, and that tier 2 is a little bit less generous. But most people don't know any of the specifics whatsoever. And this book, I believe, does a really nice job of making it simple and straightforward. And everybody can work through this book in not a lot of time and actually have a concrete idea of what they should expect when they're going to, be pulling out of the retirement. So it's not a mystery anymore. There's no ambiguous number out there that you can never reach. There's concrete information in this book where people can actually plan accordingly, and if they want to maybe teach a few less years, they can plan accordingly. If they want to teach the full time, they can do that, and now they know exactly what they're going to get in retirement. So I think it's just critical that all teachers have this information. If it's from our book, that is awesome. If it's another way, that's fine too, but it's really important.
I couldn't agree more. It's literally the first thing that we tell educators when we are doing presentations is, one, learn about your pension. One thing that we have noticed over the years with pensions and 403Bs, one way that they're related is that a low knowledge of your pension will potentially lead to scams in your 403B and 457 plans. Because one of the biggest Trojan horse plays that we get from agents selling 403B products is they come in pretending to be representatives of the pension, or that they're providing this special knowledge about the pension that nobody else has. And they use that as an entree to sell you financial products. So what you are doing here, what you and Karl are doing here, are arming teachers not only with the knowledge of their pension, but you are arming them with tools that will help them avoid being taken advantage of by unscrupulous financial salespeople. So I want to applaud both of you for that. It's really cool. Karl, did anything surprise you about the Illinois plan?
Yes. I mean, well, first, let me be even broader than that. I mean, every pension system is just so different. And intellectually, I knew that, like, just it makes sense, right? They're going to be a little bit different, but how different they are and in the details, just in not only how they calculate things, but in retirement age and in the other benefits they offer in addition to the defined benefit, every single state is different. And I think too often when people are talking to teachers about pension plans, they kind of assume they're all the same. And so they give some general advice, and it's not necessarily the general advice is maybe bad, although sometimes it is. But it's just knowing the specifics really makes a difference. And so, yeah, I mean, one of the ways that, Colorado, which is what I know the most about, we don't call them tiers, but we have a ton of them because they just kept making incremental changes. But each one of those changes was relatively small. Whereas in Illinois, there's just 2 tiers right now, tier 1 and tier 2, but the change is huge. And it's a hard cutoff. If you're hired, after a certain date, you're in tier 2. And as Eric mentioned, the benefits are much less generous. And even with that, I would say it's to me, it's not even so much that the benefits are less generous, it's the retirement age that is so much later. Yeah. That makes a big difference in terms of planning. Having said all that, I still think it's a really good pension plan. And I think that folks who don't think about it and don't plan with that in mind are really missing a huge opportunity.
Yeah, it's just so important to know and understand your pension. And I completely get how educators, it can be confusing. I mean, you mentioned tiers, they call them something different in Colorado. Dan and I jokingly refer to them as tiers, TEARS. Depending on which one you're in, you're either crying happy tears or sad tears. And I don't know, it kind of drives people nuts. Dan and I do the same thing. We actually we give a general formula because we might be talking to teachers or educators from 50 different states. But that's why we so emphasize you need to check your own plan. So it's the book doesn't just focus on the pension. It does have some defined contribution information in there as well. Eric, how much does the book get into 403B and maybe 457 environment within Illinois?
Some, not a ton, but we definitely address that the options for many 403Bs are not great. And it is, I think Illinois is pretty representative of the rest of the country on the options. Some districts have good options, others do not. My former district, we only had one option, and that was AXA equitable, and which I do not believe is great at all. But the really exciting thing is Illinois is coming out with a state-sponsored 457 plan, and it's in the works. They were hoping to get it released for this upcoming fall. Still haven't heard if that's going to happen or not. And we were actually able to find a chart of what the expected expense ratios and the fund offerings were going to be, and they're very, very good. So if you are in a district that does not have good 403B options, this 457 plan is coming soon, and you should be able to make the switch as soon as it does, because the expense ratios and the fund offerings are incredibly competitive.
Yeah, I've heard some very good things about this program as well. I'm really looking forward to it. Dan and I believe that 457 plans can really be, in many cases, maybe in all cases, a better solution than the 403B. So, Karl, what's the most important thing you'd like Illinois teachers to get out of this collaboration?
That's a tough one. That's always hard for me to come out with the most important thing. Let me see if I can formulate something, but I think it just goes back to, I mean, it's a cliche, but that knowledge is power. Yeah. And that knowing how your TRS pension works in conjunction with your school district benefits, in conjunction with your IRAs and the rest of your financial plan is just huge. And that it's not, you don't have to be a CPA. Nothing wrong with being a CPA, but you don't have to be a CPA. You don't have to be a financial planner. You don't have to be a Wall Street analyst. You don't have to be a stock picker. And it doesn't take a ton of time to learn what you need to know. Yes, the more time you take, the more you're going to find out, and probably the better you'll do. But I think this book is a pretty good example that you can take a couple hours, and in that couple hours, and I don't want to overhype the book, but can be life-changing for someone who just hasn't thought about this stuff or feels uncomfortable thinking about this stuff. And that a little bit of planning and small decisions along the way, particularly if you make them early, but even if you make them later, can have huge payoffs down the road. Partially due to the magic of compound interest, and partially just by avoiding bad decisions, whether that's a bad 403B or whether that's taking advice to pull your pension out when which sometimes that might be okay, but most of the time is probably not the best approach. Whether that's trying to pick stocks versus sticking with low cost diversified index funds. There's just so many decisions that really aren't that difficult to understand and that you can implement without becoming, a financial planning nerd, like some of us have become. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you don't have to do that. And that this is, the idea behind this book is really to, hey, for that person who just doesn't want to go that deep, here's the basic information that's going to do a lot of good. And then hopefully it will encourage you to learn some more.
That's exactly what I hoped you'd say, and even better than than I could have hoped. And it reminded me of a tweet I saw from a financial planner last night. I'm working on putting this into a presentation. He kind of said something similar. He said some individuals in finance are trustworthy. So he's actually talking about advisors, because a lot of people think that they have to rely on an advisor. And he said some individuals in finance are trustworthy. Most are not, which I thought was funny. You can find the ones who are worthy of your trust, but even when you do, your best financial foundation is one built by self-education. And this book, combined with, of course, Teach and Retire Rich, is your first baby steps into that self-education. So we've got Colorado, we've got Illinois. Karl, are you looking to collaborate with other teachers on other state plans?
Funny you should mention that. Since you guys threw me under the bus live the last time, I apparently am. First of all, we in addition to Colorado and Illinois, we also have now published Iowa. I believe we'll be on this podcast yet again in August with Matt Townsley, my co-author for Iowa. So that is already out and available. Working on both Maine and Wyoming, and hoping those will be out within the next month. We're getting kind of close. My co-authors are working hard on that as well. Also found through the Teach and Retire Rich podcast. I've got a nibble from somebody from Nebraska who has indicated an interest, but we haven't he hasn't committed yet, but I'm hoping he will. So those are all in the works. Nebraska, maybe not, but we'll see, hopefully. If you're listening, I'm Tyler. I'm hoping you want to do this. And then for other states, I'm open. I think you guys will post a link along with this podcast to basically just a Google form where you can fill out your interest in doing this, or you can just reach out via email or Twitter or any other way you want, and go from there.
That's amazing. This is so cool. I think we're going to get to 50 states. We're starting. I mean, within less than a year, we're already at 3 states. I got another 2 on the way, maybe another one. This is really exciting. Eric, so for our listeners who are contemplating taking this step and co-authoring with Karl, what sort of time commitment would they be looking at here?
Yeah. So. It's hard to say. It's not an insignificant amount of time. I spent quite a bit of time on it. However, I'm a pretty busy person at this time in my life. I still have my obligations at Illinois College, and I have 3 young children at home. So I've got a lot going on. But I try to work on it at least a couple times a week for a few hours. And Karl was really, really great to work with. He's very on the ball. He is very with it. And so I sometimes felt bad because he was waiting on me most of the time. But I tried to be diligent and continue to work every week for a couple of times. And we did this in a couple of months, 2 or 3 months. So if you have just a little bit of extra time and it's of interest to you, I think you should dive in, contact Karl. It's been an absolutely incredible experience. I never really expected to do anything like this. So going into it, I didn't have a ton of confidence, but like I said, Karl was great to work with. And I'm very excited. I couldn't be more excited that we have this really incredible resource for teachers. And I really do genuinely hope that this is a resource for teachers in all 50 states.
I would jump in and say that, at least from my perspective, I hope it came across to Eric this way. It's pretty low pressure. I mean, it's not like it's a hard and fixed deadline. I'm not a publisher who's saying you need to get me your draft by this date because we got to do this and that and go through the editors and whatever. If it takes 2 months, great. If it takes 2 years, fine, because 2 years from now we'll still have something that didn't exist before. Having said that, I don't think it should take that long, because we have the basic idea down, and the very idea of TLDR means it can't get too long, because if it does, then we've totally blown it. And so There are some parameters where we're trying to keep this relatively simple and straightforward, so that in and of itself, I think limits the scope of it to something that's manageable. And again, there's no hard and fast deadlines, so it's whatever works for folks.
Karl, can you remind our audience what TLDR means?
So TLDR is an abbreviation that became popular, I don't know, 10 or so years ago on the internet, and it stands for too long didn't read. And the way it was used typically was somebody would reference something else, sometimes even link to it, but because some people won't read anything that's longer than a screen or two, they would summarize it by using TLDR. And saying, hey, if you don't want to read the whole thing, here are the salient points. And so for whatever reason, that stuck in my head when I was thinking about what to name the book. And I said, well, that kind of fits that this, while it's, maybe not truly the character limit of Twitter, the book is a little longer than that. But it's the same idea. There are amazing resources, and we have a web page with resources that link to lots of other books, web pages, podcasts, where people can learn more. And frankly, they're better than what we've written. Maybe not specific to Illinois TRS. I think we're pretty good there. But in terms of the general information in the book, but so many people get intimidated by a 400-page book, but a 120-page book that is specific to their pension plan, as well as just general advice that applies to everyone, that's much more doable. And people are willing to give it a shot. And I think it's readable enough. And when they get into it, they say, okay, I can read the next little section. Okay, I can read the next little section. And pretty soon they figure out they've read the whole thing in a couple of hours. And as Eric said, they have something actionable that they can go and make some concrete decisions based on this, and or learn a little bit more.
Well, Karl, that was my experience reading your book, the one on Colorado. I was going to hold it up, but I have a brother who teaches in Durango, Colorado, and he and I road trip to Seattle earlier in the summer, and I gave him the book. He called me after he finished it, which took him a couple days. That's all. He was so complimentary of the writing style. It connects directly to what you said. It's very readable, and it was so personable to him. A couple of his comments were, in addition to how readable it was, things he wishes he would have known. So if you are a younger teacher out there, get these books. Karl, what is the name of the latest book?
The latest book?
I mean, the Illinois book.
Oh, the Illinois book. Here we go.
Oh, good. You can hold it up. I like this.
I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but
All
so
right.
I really like the naming we did with TLDR. I like that, but the rest of it gets really, really wordy, but which is totally on brand for me. But it's TLDR, Financial Literacy for Illinois Teachers Retirement System Members, Optimizing Financial Decisions Based on Your TRS Benefits. And while wordy, I think it does communicate really what the book is. And I think that is kind of on brand, that while I'm hoping the book itself isn't that wordy, it is plain language and tells you exactly what it's talking about.
It's funny that the title's more wordy than the actual chapters.
Yes.
I kind of love that.
It's an ironic title, right? It's an ironic title.
Yes.
The title is too long, didn't read.
Yes, the title is too long.
And so you made it too long so they won't. It's perfect. It's an ironic title. That's what you're going with.
Hopefully all the language arts teachers at least will appreciate that.
And where would someone get that book, Karl?
They would get that book at Amazon.com. This is self-published. It is, we try to make it, this is not a money-making enterprise for Eric and I. We do make a small commission, but the paperback is a whopping $9 and the Kindle edition is $5. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. So you can find it at Amazon. And I believe, again, you guys will probably leave a link along with this podcast, but you can always just Google it as well.
Eric, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think we've done a nice job. I do want to say one more thing, that teachers have more control over their finances and lives than many think. I feel like a lot of teachers, their personalities, they like to have a lot of control. They want to make sure their classroom is how they want it, and they run things. But with their financial lives, they kind of turn everything over to the pension system. We don't negotiate our own raises. It's just kind of, we're along for the ride. And I don't think that's accurate. I think we have much more control than what most people think. No, we don't negotiate our own raises, in the pension system is in place when we retire. But we have lots of control over how much we save, what retirement accounts that we use, and that gives us, power to not just assume we're going to teach to retirement age, because teaching it's a really hard, it's a hard gig. It's grinding, and it takes a lot out of you. And most people just assume that they have to teach until full retirement age. And I believe that teachers have much more control over that. And when you take that control of your own financial life back for yourself, your finances are much less stressful, and you don't carry that into the classroom with you. And so this could, even reduce burnout within the classroom. So I just want to make sure that all the teachers know that you do have control over your financial life. All it takes is a little bit of information. If you get it from our book, awesome. If not, search it somewhere else, because teaching is such an incredible career, but it is difficult. But we need really good teachers in the field. So take control over your financial life, and you'll be glad that you did.
I think that's a great way to end it. Karl, thank you. Eric, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.